All right. Last attempt with this software. We are hoping to see it live all the places. We are using a little bit of a new software, so sorry about the errors that may have occurred. We're going to do this one more time. We are going live on hopefully TikTok and Instagram and YouTube, and right now, what I want you to do is, if you are live in any of those places, go ahead and connect um, and go ahead and connect with us to on all of that right now, and we will look at that right now in Instagram and TikTok and YouTube. Any questions that you've got right now, I am trying to view all of that in all of those places. So, yeah, let's see what we've got going on. Uh, let's see. All right, here we go. Instagram. Oh, Instagram and YouTube and TikTok. Let's see. All right, let's see. I'm not sure. Let's look and see how we've got this going. Um, all right. All right, let's see. All right. There's not a specific topic open to any questions. So go ahead and just put any questions in there, guys. I am trying to figure out how to monitor TikTok. So it's just going to take, I'm going to be answering, but I'm also going to be troubleshooting this. Uh, Okay, so current live session. I'm not sure how to see that. Um, all right, let's see what we've got. Live dashboard. Ah, that's awful. Okay, so it's not going live on TikTok, but that's fine. It doesn't always. Um, hang on. All right, so let me see what you got on Instagram here. What do I think about interfaith relationships? Yeah, so Hal and Daniel, the Bible does not actually. So you probably are talking about a scripture passage that says like you shouldn't be unequally yoked. That comes from the it comes from First Corinthians, I think First Corinthians, and it's interesting because to understand that verse, you really have to understand. Um, you really have to understand what's going on in the Corinthian culture. So, um, uh, you've got to understand the culture, and the culture in Corinth is like a metropolitan culture. And one of the things that's happening is there's a lot of temples to a lot of different gods in the um, in that Corinthian culture. And so it was very wealthy. It was a big trade center. And so what would happen is that people who were Christians, remember, Christianity is a tiny, tiny, tiny little sect, tiny group inside that huge Corinthian culture. And so oftentimes in order to trade, in order to be part of these trade deals, you would have to you would have to make sort of deals that would involve saying that you're going to make a sacrifice to another god, to their god that you would somehow worship in their religion, and in order to get the deal. And so, what's going on there? And you can read it when you read it in context. It makes a lot more sense. What's going on there is it's really saying like, don't worship another god to get a trade deal. The unequally yoked is not talking about partnerships or romantic relationships or anything like that. When you go back into the Old Testament and it prohibits certain kinds of relationships, that has to do with a purity. I'm sorry, a legal code that is very specific to that moment in time. So I hope that helps. Um, so, Mayor Irish, you said you're reading a history of the Bible by John Barton, now left wondering how we can trust the Bible at all and how to form an idea of who Jesus really is. Yeah, no problem. That's a really great. It's a really great question. And what's going on? What you have to understand there is that the um, a lot of people were given a version of how it is that you can trust the Bible, and it was like a very literalistic idea. Um, uh, One of those ideas is all about the it was a very literalistic understanding, kind of like if it says like that this person went to this place at this time, you have it has to have happened exactly in that way. The problem is that a lot of values change over thousands of years. So, for example, the values of history have drastically changed, and so at that time, the way that historians valued history, the way they thought something was good history, is that they would they said that you need to tell the truth by using the things that actually happened. You would sort of paint the truth with the palette of the actual events. And so modern day history that gets everything exactly as it happened, but is very messy and confusing, they would say that is doing bad history. And so what that means is when you read the ancient history with modern historical values, you you get a you get a very difficult understanding because they would put things in different orders. You'll find contradictions. You'll find all of that kind of stuff in the in this text. And so, but in the ancient history, they're saying, no, no, no. When we rearrange it this way, that gives us the truth. So there's the other thing to remember when you're looking at academics like John Barton and others, you will find that there are different ways that something can be true, right? So there is that literalistic, this happened in this order kind of truth. But then there are deeper truths. Like there are truths that that like things can be true like an instruction manual. Things can also be true like a poem. And so a lot of times you might say like the Bible is true. Like I'll say the Bible is not true because it happened. The Bible is true because it happens. Like it helps me process my life right now. So for example, the story in Genesis of Adam and Eve, whether or not there was an actual Adam and Eve doesn't matter, because this story is that like when humans are given the choice between good and bad, often we choose the bad. And so that's my story, right? When I'm given the choice to do good or bad, I will sometimes choose bad. And so it's not true because it happened. It's also true because it happens. The other really important thing when we talk about the Bible is to think about the different domains. So the Bible is an ancient spiritual text. It's a religious text. And so the tools of religion are to help you understand yourself and reality and through a religious lens, talking about God and transcendence and that kind of thing. And so you don't cross domains. It's like in science, if you use the tools of biology to study geology or cosmology, you're not going to come up with reliable data. And so you keep the tools in the domain that they belong. And that's why when you're using religion, when you're using the tools of religion to investigate reality, you're going to come up with religious answers. If you're using the tools of religion to find biological, cosmological, other scientific answers, you're not going to come up with reliable data, right? And in the same way, if you're using scientific tools to investigate religion, you're also not going to come up with reliable data, because those tools are designed for a specific domain. And so when you talk about how can you trust the Bible when you understand it academically, I would say you can trust the Bible more because you're able to understand its meaning at a deeper level, and then you can apply that meaning to your life. So I hope that helps you on Instagram. I'm going to look at TikTok now, and so Ash asks, how should you read the Bible as inclusive Christians? This is a great question. The key to understanding, like if you're an inclusive person, I would say that the Bible sort of echoes your sentiment. But the key is understanding that you are looking at something that was written to an ancient culture that had ancient cultural values 2,000 years ago. Like you just go back 100 years ago in history and you think of the difference in the cultural values between then and now, right? They're massive. Go back 2,000 years to another part of the globe, you're going to find something completely different. And so it's important to understand the cultural values of that time, because the people were writing to the people in that culture. And so to understand what they're saying, you have to understand the culture. We don't need to baptize the culture 2,000 years ago and try to recreate it today. But once you can understand the cultural side, then you can understand the truth, and then you can sort of take the culture out of it. Now, even if you don't understand ancient cultures, you don't have the resources to study that, you can just take a moment and take a breath and think about what are the things that are defined by culture. Things like marriage, things like gender roles, things like sexuality, things like, an enormous number of things are really defined for us by culture. And so when you encounter those things in the text of the Bible, you need to be careful that you are not, you're seeing those as cultural things, and the cultural things are on the surface. The truth is deeper below, and you've got to lift the culture off and see what the deeper truth is. And so, like if it's talking about marriage or gender roles or whatever, don't look at the gender role and what it's saying about that gender role. Look at that deeper level. So is it talking about love? Is it talking about sacrifice? Is it talking about whatever? So that's I hope, Ash, I hope that helps when you talk about reading the Bible as inclusive uh, people. Um, Grin Angle, you said, why not Buddhism? Buddhism is an interesting question because a lot of people actually will look at Buddhism as a philosophical system rather than a religion. There are a lot of people that actually consider themselves Christian Buddhists. The idea of letting go of desire, all of the Buddhist meditation practices, people find a lot of life in that. And so I'd say, why not Buddhism? I mean, maybe it may work for you. Um, Dr. Van Kuren, what does inclusive mean in this context? I would say probably what Ash was talking about when he was saying being inclusive. So he was talking about LGBTQ people and believing that they are fully loved by God, created by God as LGBTQ people, and that being LGBTQ or in LGBTQ relationships is not a sin. All right, so I'm going to go back over to um, uh, to Instagram and see what we've got there. Oh yeah, you just read Dan McClellan's book, man. That is a fantastic book, and you're having problems with what to do with the academic study of religion and how it affects our understanding and our trust in the Bible. So I mentioned this before, but our trust in the Bible, your trust in the Bible, if that is your sacred text, if a lot of people who who grew up in an evangelical background were told to read the Bible literally, and if you couldn't read it literally, and then, or if you found a problem with the literalism, if there was an error in the Bible or anything, that you couldn't trust the Bible. But that's a really surface reading of the Bible. It is an ancient text. And ancient texts go through revision, they go through all kinds of things. And so studying it deeply so that you understand it at that level can help you trust the Bible. It's like Shakespeare or Beowulf, like getting down to understanding it at an academic level, the way it developed and all of that kind of stuff, doesn't make you trust Shakespeare or Beowulf any less. Right? It actually gives you a better understanding so that you can read it for what it says and not read it for what it doesn't say, base your life or beliefs on something that's not reliable in there or that is sort of culturally based, etc. So I like to say that the Bible can be true, not just because it happened, but because it happens. Like the story of Adam and Eve in Genesis chapters 2 and following. It doesn't matter if there's an Adam and Eve. It's not just true because it happened. That story is true because it happens to you and me. Like when we are given a choice between good and evil, we will oftentimes choose evil, and there are consequences. It shows that there are consequences relationally with each other, with people, relationally with God, with the earth, with our work. And that's a really it's a story that's true because it happens right now. Mimchi says, you practice secular Buddhism. It's very helpful to me and doesn't go against my Christian ideals. Yeah, that's true. I know a lot of people who find that same thing. All right, I'm gonna give you. I'm gonna go back over to TikTok and find another question here. Do you think Jesus believed in eternal conscious punishment? I don't know. It's not really clear, I think, what Jesus believed, and I'm definitely not going to try to speak on behalf of Jesus. The idea of hell as eternal conscious punishment, of there being eternal conscious punishment as an option in the afterlife, is just a wild a wild thing, right? It doesn't seem just or right that for finite mistakes on earth, you could then experience an eternity of punishment. That the way that we understand hell actually didn't develop until much later, hundreds of years after it didn't really begin developing until hundreds of years after, and it really wasn't fully formed until the Middle Ages. The people right after the sort of most popular view right after the Jesus was around and the church was beginning was an idea that the choice to follow God would extend into the afterlife. This is important because if you think of it at that point, the idea, Christianity was a very small sect on the global scale, a very small religious movement, and so the idea that people would experience eternal conscious punishment for the rest of eternity because they didn't choose to follow God in this life, it makes God to be even more horrifying, right? So the theology that they had said, no, we are going to believe that when people die, they can continue to choose to follow God and to be present with God all the way through the afterlife. And in the Bible, you really have a hard time finding a strong case for eternal conscious punishment. So, for example, there's a couple of verses in the New Testament where it's really two words. One of them is a word called Gehenna that sometimes is translated as hell. And Gehenna is an actual place. It's a place in just outside of the old city in Jerusalem where the stories in the Bible and the Mishnah talk about kings going and performing child sacrifices there, and so it was a very unholy place, and it's symbolic, right? Another one is Hades. Remember the story of Abraham or the rich man and Lazarus? They both die. The rich man has been sort of evil. Lazarus has been good. They go to Hades. Hades is a Greek mythological concept. You studied it probably in your high school English class. It is where everyone goes who dies, and some of them have a good experience, some of them have a bad experience. And in Hades, in the story that Jesus tells, Lazarus, the good person, is with Abraham, and the rich person is experiencing bad. They're in the same place. So Jesus is clearly just using the terminology in the story that people know. In the Old Testament, the word is Sheol. Sheol is a place, again, where everybody goes after they die. It's sort of a negative to neutral existence. Like I said, it's a hard case to make for eternal conscious punishment just in the text itself. You really have to go later in history as that idea and theological system develop to find that. All right, let's see. Let's see. Could Jesus have been talking about Aquarius when he mentioned the man with the pitcher? I'm not familiar enough with Aquarius to be able to answer that. Yeah, Mamchi on Instagram. You're fairly new to my Instagram. What is it that I'm skeptical about? I'm skeptical about everything. So for me, what I mean when I'm a deep skeptic, also a pastor, is that skeptics don't just accept something because somebody else told them. They look for data and they try to base their understanding about life and reality on data. So people who are skeptical about science, they go to reliable sources and they look those up and they try to get reliable data. It's the same thing for me, really in every area of my life, including religion. I want reliable academic sources that will tell me if I'm looking at a passage in the Bible that will help me understand that. I also, another data source when you're operating with religion is to live this thing out. When you come to a belief, to live that belief out in your life and see a couple of things. Does it make you a better version of yourself? Does it help you find a purpose greater than yourself? And does it help you experience a sense of transcendence? Maybe connection with God or divine or the universe, or maybe just the ability to rise above your circumstances. If it doesn't do several of those things or any of those things, it doesn't work. You need to go back and you get more reliable data. So for me, the more data I have about something, the stronger that belief is going to be, and the harder it is going to be for me to question that belief. But any of my beliefs are possible to be undone if I find enough reliable data to say that I'm wrong, because the sort of underlying concept in skepticism is that you are wrong. I'm sure that I'm wrong about things. I'm about at least half of what I believe. I just don't know which half. And so I keep asking questions. I keep collecting data, and that's that. I hope that helps. Kristen W., I wish all pastors were skeptical. Thank you so much. People need to all use discernment. I agree. Would you say the Bible, this is cast on TikTok? Sorry, I've got some allergies and asthma at the same time. Would you say that the Bible as we know it is the true translation and accurate? I'm not sure what you mean by the true translation. The Bible is an ancient text, and so it is like all ancient texts, in that it's transcribed. Some of it was oral tradition that was put into writing, and then that's been transcribed over and over throughout the years. And it's like every other ancient text. There are things that have been added or changed throughout the years, and as academics understand that, you'll actually find in the Bible missing verses because the biblical scholars realized that wasn't in the original text, or there's an asterisk. Like the end of the book of Mark is a perfect example where it talks about holding snakes. That wasn't in the original text. We're really sure about that. Now, when you're talking about translation is from the original text into a different language, and so that gives all kinds of other levels of complexity when it comes to understanding idioms and what words mean. Some words in the Bible, we can only find a couple of uses of them in the ancient world, so it can be really difficult to be 100% confident in our translation into English. But if you're looking for the best English translation, scholars will tell you that it is the New Revised Standard Version Updated Edition. I've actually got a link in my profile to an Amazon list. You can actually go there and just click on that. Mimchi on Instagram, very helpful. Thank you. I'm glad that I was able to help. All right, let's look at YouTube. I'm trying to find. I'm looking at. We've got a lot of this. Okay, so finding community when all of the churches in my area are biblical literal. Oh yeah, how do you find community when all the churches in your area are biblical literalists? That can be really difficult. I'll tell you this. I'm a fully online pastor. I have a digital faith community. We don't like stream a guy with a guitar singing and preaching or anything like that. We call it not church. And the reason we call it not church, because early on somebody said, it's like church. It's like all the things that I wanted from church. People are talking about spiritual things. People are really there for each other. We have a place that we hold space for each other. Somebody will like post, I'm going to the hospital with heart pains. People will say, I'm praying for you, or I'm holding space for you, or whatever that they do. So a community that's really there for each other. And nobody's telling you you're going to hell because you have tarot decks. Everybody there is trying to find the beliefs and practices that work for them. And I'll tell you, I have never experienced anything like this. Like, there's people of all different religious identities and non-identities there. and the posture, even when people post things that other people don't believe, it's not to correct them. It'll be like, oh, wow, you know, I've never heard that phrase that way. Can you tell me more about what that means? It's beautiful. If you're interested in Not Church, you can go to patreon.com/skeptic pastor, patreon.com/skeptic pastor. The people in there, all of us have been traumatized in some way by being manipulated out of our money. So we don't actually accept donations. Everything that we do is pay for what you get. And so it's $3 a month to be part of the Not Church community. And, if it doesn't work for you, you just stop paying. I hope that helps, Justin, from YouTube. All right, let's look and see. We've got some more questions on TikTok. Have you heard of Bashar? I have heard of Bashar, and I don't really have any thoughts on it. It's definitely not an approach that I am part of. So yeah, I don't really have any specific thoughts other than like it's not my cup of tea. I've seen some words are not correct, and there are changes in the whole meaning of Scripture. Yes, there are some words that were not correct. And this is really why it's important to use a very up-to-date modern translation of the Bible. There is a word in the book of Jude, for example, that the object of the word changes. And basically, it goes from meaning that you should be discerning about who you are nice to, sort of skeptical about who you were nice to, or maybe a better way to say that would be like you should question who you should be nice to, like be aware, to like you should be nice to those who question. You see how the object changes there? And so that does change the meaning of it. So yeah, that's an important thing. When you take the Bible on the whole, there's the percentage of that is not a huge percentage, but it does happen. It's an ancient text, and that's just what ancient texts are. How does the ESV stack up? ESV is not great. ESV has a really specific bias. So the New International Version, which was already is already problematic. The New International Version has a very clear viewpoint that the Bible is univocal. It speaks with one voice. And so there are things in the scholars for the NIV changed objects and stuff like that to make it feel like the Bible stories were harmonized, were in harmony, and there were not multiple voices that might disagree with each other. The NIV was looking at updating some of its language with some of the new insights, and some of the most conservative groups said, no, this is not okay. We're going to create our own translation, and we're going to make it even more conservative, even more univocal, all of that kind of stuff. And so the ESV was born out of that. I'm not a biblical scholar. I'll tell you, if you really want to deep dive into that, Dan McClellan has some fantastic videos that go deep dive into that. But hopefully that can help. All right. Isn't Romans 1 pretty clear about LGBTQ people? Actually, no. So two things. First off, we need to understand that sexuality is something that's defined by culture, and that the way that they understood sex and sexuality in the ancient world, very different than the way we do. So sex was not mutual. Women were very bound to a single man, but men were not bound to a single woman. Virginity only mattered for the woman because she was bought, and that was a proof that she had not been that she was being sort of bought in whole by her husband through a dowry, and there was a ceremony and all of that kind of stuff. But the way I like the way Dan McClellan puts it, he says in the ancient world, sex was something an active sexual agent did to a passive sexual object. It's very, very different. And because of the way that they understood, they did not have vocabulary. They did not have the concept of LGBTQ that we have today. And so, though there definitely were queer people at that time, their language, their culture did not have a way to express, like two people of the same gender following love and living their life together. They didn't have a word, a concept like that. And so it's really difficult to even find a way to find our modern understanding of human sexuality in the Bible. And so you have to be careful when you're doing that, because you've got to sort of tease out the culture a little bit so that you're not trying to bring a sexual ethic that makes women objects and sex not mutual and all of that kind of stuff. Because if you're going to try to baptize a culture and say that culture's understanding of sexuality has to be brought into today, then that means women are going to be objects. Like, you've got to bring the whole thing. So let's talk about Romans chapter 1. Romans chapter 1, it says that people gave up their natural inclinations for unnatural ones. The men gave up their natural desires for women to fulfill unnatural desires with men, and the same with women. Now, again, there's a cultural understanding that doesn't understand LGBTQ the way we do. So you've got to lift a little bit of the culture out to understand it. What it's saying, though, is that there is a natural inclination, and going against your natural inclination is what's wrong. And when you take that now, look at what we understand about human sexuality, that people are born LGBTQ. That means that their natural inclination, if you talk to one of your queer friends, they will tell you this is their natural desire. And what that means is to go, if you take this concept from Romans chapter 1, for them, for a gay person to go and try to be in a heterosexual relationship, that is violating their natural inclination, their natural desires. And so if you take the principle from Romans chapter 1 and you tease out the culture and apply the principle itself to our modern, fuller understanding of human sexuality, it's actually, in my opinion, affirming. All right, done a couple from TikTok. Let's just scan and see if there's any new ones on Instagram or YouTube. Looks like we're going to stay with TikTok for a little bit. My parents are biblical literalists. Oh, Joshua, I know that can be really difficult. I'm United Methodist and SPRC. We were meeting a new pastor. The New Revised Standard Version is her choice. That's good. New NRSV is good. A lot of people don't know that there's an updated edition to the NRSV that just adds the latest pieces of understanding about translation from mostly from the academic consensus organization that's called the Society for Biblical Literature. John, my guess is that that pastor would probably be excited to hear that there's an updated edition with the latest scholarship. My family believes, this is Cass, that the Bible was written by God and it was not. It's heavily influenced by man. Cass, I get what you're saying, and in some ways I agree, but agree with it. But I just want to say that, like, the Bible is an ancient spiritual text. Ancient spiritual texts, all of them, the Bhagavad Gita, the Quran, all of them are written by humans. Like there's not anything that's actually written by some sort of divine pen. And so to say it is written, it's influenced by man is to assume that there is a way that it could have come to be that wasn't influenced by humans. And I'll use humans. Um, so so I would say, yes, it is written by humans, and you have to study it at that level to understand the truth of it, the deep truth of it. And there's really beautiful, deep truth there that has informed some of the most important and wonderful movements in history, and the mistranslation of it, some of the worst. But yeah, I would say, I would just sort of make that clarification there that yes, it is written by humans, as all spiritual texts are, as all texts in general are. Um, let's see. I gave up on Augustinian theology and offshoots. Yeah, I get that. I have friends that said they knew from an early, yeah, right. They knew that they were queer from an early age. It's surreal that oh, that I am able to throw confetti in hearts during this talk. Yeah, thank you so much, by the way, for all of this. And you're welcome. I love doing this. Um, uh, you're so refreshing. Thank you. In your approach, no judgment and reference. Thank you. You are so welcome. That is, I try to bring data, and my goal is to help people find religious beliefs that work for them. One of the ways I do that is this community that I run called Not Church. It's actually a place where people like us come together and try to support people in finding spiritual beliefs and practices that work for them. There are people of all kinds of different religious identities, and it's like church in the sense that there are people saying spiritual things, talking about everything from purity culture, their own religious history, even politics, and they're there for each other as a community. They hold space for each other. When somebody's going to the hospital, they post, people are there. We have a weekly Zoom meeting. We're going to do some in-person events coming up here really shortly. It's really great. And I think you would love it, and you should check it out. Um, everybody in there has had been manipulated out of money by churches, or almost everybody. So we don't accept donations. Everything we do is pay for what you get. And so it's $3 a month. You can go to patreon.com/skepticpastor. It's patreon.com/skepticpastor. Try it out. It's really fantastic. It's what I always wished that I was able to find. Um, and I think you'd really love it. And if it doesn't work for you, you just stop paying, and it's fine. All right. As far as translations, what do you think about the New Jerusalem Bible? I'm not familiar with that. I will tell you the most accurate translation is the New Revised Standard Version, updated edition. That's what the academics say. I would like to find my way back to Christianity, but feel delusioned and hurt by Christians. Man, I hear you. I hope that you heard what I said about Not Church, patreon.com/skepticpastor, because that's exactly, you need a community of people that are doing the same kind of work, that can resonate with you when you're struggling and saying, yeah, I'm right there. This is what I did. Hearing other people's journey is really huge. And also, you could check out the podcast Unbelief on Sundays. There's like 30 minutes to an hour of progressive teaching about the Bible. And then on Wednesdays, there's an interview often with people who are deconstructing, listening to their journey and processing that together. Yeah. All right, I'm gonna run for your organization's website. Thank you so much. You're so kind. I can't wait to see you there. Okay, we're going to go to Instagram. Mimchi, why do you think it seems like so many Christians are bothered by LGBTQ plus? I say seems like because my experience in the South may be different from other areas of the U.S. Yeah, I get that. I spent a lot of time in the deep South, and I, this is just my opinion. based on absolutely no data other than my own experience. Um, the culture that I lived in constantly was finding people to be the other, right? The weird ones, the scary ones, the ones that they could sort of put up as a mirror to themselves and say, look, I'm not like that person. People that they could pin bad stuff on them. They would do that with immigrants, right? The immigrants were the criminals. They would other them. And LGBTQ people were one of those groups. They could they could say, "Oh no, don't be like that. Don't be like them. They are perverts or they are deviants or whatever." And it was a method for control and indoctrination. It was a way to when you other people, it's a unhealthy way, but it's a way to sort of establish the boundaries of your community and get loyalty to your community because you're saying, look, we have to be loyal to us. We're the right ones. They are the wrong ones. Luckily, we're here. We know the right thing. I think that's a huge part of that. Um, we're live on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. You can go to those places and post a comment, and I'm going to answer as many of them as I can. Can I plug the Episcopal Church skeptic who went from atheist to Buddhist to Episcopal Buddhist? I love that. You can totally. Episcopal Church is fantastic. Some people, it's not for everybody because unfortunately, a lot of people were traumatized just by church in general. Just can't go back to the system, to the organization. But if you're up for it, find an Episcopal church. They're progressive. They're inclusive, and like anything, the amount of being progressive varies from church to church and region to region. But yeah, the Episcopal Church is amazing. I actually spent some time working in an Episcopal church. Um, uh, the South is very different when it comes to beliefs. You are correct. I've lived in the deep South, and now I'm on the East Coast, and I used to live on the West Coast. You're not wrong. Sin is an overused word in the Christian community. I agree. I think that sin is overused, and particularly because the meaning of that, I think, in modern day in English carries with it a weight and baggage that is not super helpful. It carries this guilt and shame, I think, that is not super helpful. If you say like mistake or getting off track, I think that's really what it means, because when you talk about in the Bible, you talk about repentance. Repentance is like getting back on track. It's like turning away from doing the wrong thing and doing the right thing. I feel like that's a way more accessible word. I agree with you. I think sin is overused for sure. Oh my, I think you nailed it. I think that was in regards to the othering stuff. Yeah. I've been told my faith is not strong if I'm a skeptic with questions. Well, if you're told that, just send them to John chapter 20. I'm confident in saying this. I believe that questions and doubts are a sign of spiritual health. It means that you are doing the work. You're thinking deeply about faith and spirituality. And there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. John chapter 20 is the story of doubting Thomas. Doubting Thomas is clearly a skeptic, and he risked believing that Jesus was actually who he said he was. And Jesus dies like a common criminal. And when the disciples are gathered back together, he's not with them. I think that he's not with them because he doesn't want to mess things up. He loves those people. Like most of the skeptics I know, they don't want to ruin other people's beliefs. And then Jesus appears to the disciples, and it's an amazing experience. And then right after Jesus appears to the disciples, the very next thing, it says they go to Thomas. They tell him what happened. And Thomas is a skeptic. He's like, no, I'm not gonna believe this until I have proof myself. I want to put my fingers in the holes. And then the story starts over. It's actually the same exact words. The disciples were in the room, the door was locked, but it adds one piece. It says, and Thomas was with them. And then the same exact things, the same exact word, Jesus appears. Jesus says the exact same thing. Jesus doesn't have to do things twice. If something is repeating exactly, the reason for that is because of whatever changed. What changed was that Thomas was there. Jesus didn't shame Thomas. Jesus didn't tell Thomas that he should feel guilty for having doubts and questions and wanting data and proof. No. Jesus gives him the data he needs. Thomas, the skeptic, the doubter, is not shamed. His skepticism and doubts, the underlying value of needing data to believe, is reinforced by Jesus. So just send people to John chapter 20 when they try to shame you for doubting, because Jesus very much disagrees with them. Didn't Jesus talk about sin a lot? Yeah. I said just a second ago, I think sin is overused in Christianity. My point with saying that was that our modern English understanding of the word sin carries this level of guilt and shame with it that I don't think is very helpful. And so, yes, Jesus uses that word. But what I was trying to say is, I think a more helpful way of looking at it is mistakes, is getting off track. Because the goal, when Jesus talks about it, is trying to help people do the right thing, right? Be the best version of themselves, get back on track. Priest and Presbyterian in Nashville, Tennessee and you are totally inclusive. Bobby, that's great. Go ahead and drop the name of your church. We love if people are in Nashville to send them there. If you ever want me to come speak, I'd love to come speak at your church. I love supporting progressive churches. My DMs are always open for that kind of thing. Yeah. So thanks for sharing that live video. I'm going to look on Instagram. Sin, yeah, you said sin just means missing the mark. I agree, crypto preacher. Yeah. Best version of yourself. That's right. Justin on YouTube, sin is an archery term, missing the mark. Yes, biblical scholars would say like that is not accurate in the biblical sense, but yes, I'm hearing you. I understand exactly what you're saying, and that's a great way of understanding it. All right. If you've got a question, just go ahead and put it in the chat on YouTube or Instagram or TikTok, and I am going to answer it. I'm going to try to answer one more question before we get off. It's been great seeing you, by the way. If you want to join my community of people that are trying to find spiritual beliefs and practices that work for them, it's a loving, inclusive, supportive community. Nobody's telling you you're going to hell if you've got some tarot cards. You can go to patreon.com/skeptic pastor, patreon.com/skeptic pastor. It's $3 a month. We charge for it because we've all been manipulated out of money by churches, and we're not up for that. So everything we do is pay for what you get. $3 a month. It's totally worth it. It's everything I always wished I could find in a religious community. But yeah, and if it doesn't work for you, just stop paying. All right. Any more questions? I'm going to give you just another minute to do that, and then we're going to say goodbye. And I do this at least once a week, sometimes during the day, sometimes during the afternoon and the evening, to give everybody a way to engage. Okay. Janitor, is there astrology in the Bible that pastors don't talk about? Yes. I don't know if pastors don't talk about it. I talk about it. There's not astrology in the sense of like exactly the modern understanding of it. But people who were astrologers in the ancient world were closer to what we would consider scientists. They studied the night sky, and they really believed that it was sort of predictive. You remember the story of the wise men. The wise men are astrologers. They see a sign in the night sky, probably a planet in retrograde in a very specific area, and they go to that specific area that symbolized that specific kingdom to find the king. And then it says that the star went ahead of them and stopped above the place where Jesus was. And some people will say that that is, again, a planet in retrograde that was continuing to move as they traveled and stopped when they got to the right place. But who knows, janitor? Thanks for the question. Guys, it has been wonderful to get to hang out with you today. It is time for me to say goodbye. And I hope that you come back next time we are live and hang out again. Again, if you want to join my community, patreon.com/skeptic pastor. If you'd like to listen to the podcast that I do, an hour of progressive biblical teaching on Sunday and an interview with a scholar or somebody who's deconstructing on Wednesdays, it's called the Unbelief Podcast, Unbelief. It's great. I really think you love it. This week, the most recent episode is a woman that was sort of steeped in purity culture, was told that she was an old maid when she was 22 when she got married. She forced them to put obey into the vows and has deconstructed, eventually came out as bisexual. And yeah, it's a really fantastic episode. It's the Unbelief Podcast. All right. Thanks so much. And I will be seeing you very soon.